Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here, and welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to check out the plugin Insight 2 by iZotope. So if you're new to my channel and my videos, if you like what you see, click the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to get notified of all my future videos. So Insight 2 by iZotope. I've done quite a few videos on iZotope plugins, and if you haven't noticed already, I generally love their stuff. I think they develop some really great tools that are very helpful, not just selling you emulations of various things here and there. They actually try to make tools that really help you. So Insight 2 is a monitoring tool that gives us quite a few monitoring features like loudness, peak and RMS meters, spectral waveforms, spectral analyzers, history of loudness graphs to check the loudness of our entire song and see where the peaks and troughs are as the music goes, and stereo field and some other features like that. You can adjust the layout and position of the plugin to suit different times of and functions you're doing. If you put it on in a mixing session, if you put it on in a mastering session, if you're working on audio mastering or you're working on video, there's all different layouts for those situations and different standards as well. So let's just get into it and I will show you around the plugin. So I have a song here, and what I've done is I've put Insight 2 on the main mix bus out because this is primarily to me where you're going to use it. Now, I probably wouldn't even use it in a mix, to be honest with you. I'm going to show it in a mix, but I would primarily use this in a mastering session, and because that's where I'm going to make most of my adjustments. It doesn't mean you can't use it in a mix. Obviously we can, and there's certain features about it that it actually helps being in a mix, and we'll go through all of that as well. But generally, most of the time, I'm going to use this in a mastering session, and we're only going to be looking at a single stereo file. So here's the interface as it is. I've pulled it up. This is the default view that it's come up with. And the good thing about this plugin is that you can resize it to however you like. So it's good in that regard. So we will make it a bit bigger here so that we can see what we're looking at. And this is what we get in a default state. So if we play some music, you'll see some meters and various things here. So like all the other iZotope plugins, we've got some general settings here so we can load some presets. So they come with a nice selection of presets, and you can even save your own, and you can load other ones here, but they come with some standard loudness metering, audio analysis, depending on whether you're working in a mix or in a mastering session, which is obviously going to be more around the loudness style, and some music production things here. So all various different settings that are going to give you different layouts and different values in certain things here. But we're going to stay with what we've got. So, you know, this is simple layout here. You can add a preset. So once you've laid out how you want it to look and have your settings, you can save it. You can create a folder as I've done here. You can see I've got Kevin's presets. Open that up. I've got a mastering preset and a mixing preset. We can delete save presets as well. And obviously we can close that. So that's all brought up from here, and we can just flick between the presets by using these arrows if we so choose. We can reset all of the measurements, so we can start again from fresh because it obviously is keeping values there from the last time I played it, and you might want to wipe them out so that you're starting from nothing. You can even pause it if you find that you want to sort of take a snapshot of that particular moment in time, you can just press pause and it will stop everything where it is so you can have a look at it or take a screenshot or whatever you want to do with your software. So if we're looking at our loudness figures here, which we'll discuss in a few moments, we can have two options here. So if we have this unhighlighted and I play the music, it'll calculate a loudness value in each one of these. And if I stop, it stays there. Okay, these drop down the short term, that's fine. So even though that says hold the loudness, it's doing that already. But what happens is if I press play again, it wipes it out and starts again. So if I now press it on, click it on, every time I stop the audio, it retains the same values and then continues on from where it left. So it allows you to not have the loudness values reset every time you stop them audio. So if you want to just take a break through a song, but you don't want to lose track of the loudness across the entire song, you can obviously have this turned on and it will just continue where it was. If I take it off, you'll see the short-term loudness drops instantly because we're doing nothing now, and these will get wiped out. We've got a help function here that pulls up a manual to describe everything, and then we've got some various settings here, which is pretty limited settings, to be honest. There's not really much there other than show tooltips and a few other little things that I wouldn't even worry about. So the main items here are these windows, and you'll see up the top we have these little buttons, or not little, but they're buttons. And they indicate each module of this section. So we can actually turn them off. We can't turn them all off. We've got to have one on. So you'll see this is the loudness module. Let's call it a module for instance here. And then we can have a levels one. So I can turn that off and just show the levels. We have a sound field one. We can have a history, intelligibility, spectrum, and spectrogram. And we can have as many or as little as we want with a minimum of obviously one visible. We can show them all, and as you lay them out, it adjusts things and gets them into position. So if I turn it off, it'll adjust the size of these certain modules to fill up the space. So you'll see there now I've got all of these laid out horizontally. If I add one of these in, suddenly it'll shoot that across to the side and that'll lay there. The one downside to this layout, which I have asked iZotope to think about fixing, or not fixing, but adding as a feature, would be to be able to actually move these modules around and customize them more. They are basically set in predefined locations. The loudness meter levels and sound fields can only be over here. You can't move them. So it determines what you can have laid out. So obviously the sound field got bigger then when I removed levels. Now, to me, if I don't want to see levels, I don't necessarily want the sound field to be bigger. Yeah, I can adjust this. But if I wanted some obscure look, so I don't want intelligibility, I don't want the spectrogram. But let's say I wanted levels or loudness, and I don't want the history. Now, you can see here, in this case, I'm locked to this view. Yes, I can go wider. I can narrow that down. I can adjust these sizes here if I want to. So I have some flexibility. But what I don't have is, for instance, I might want this exact view. But what I actually want is I want this spectrogram to cover the entire bottom like the history did. I want the spectrogram to do that. And then I want these three modules side by side on top. I can't do that. I'm locked to this layout only. There is no option to move anything around. You can't do that. These buttons here just make it bigger and smaller. So even though you have a view, that's another thing you can do. If you want to quickly expand something, you can do that. So you are slightly limited to the way that you can lay out this view and what you see on it, which I really wish that they would look at that and make this totally modular so I could drag any of these windows around to any position and lay out this view out exactly the way I want with the exact same things that I want. At the moment, you basically can just turn items on and off and then adjust various heights and widths, but you are locked with these three modules being on the left, the history being on the bottom, and these three modules being on the right. If I get rid of all of the left, yes, they will expand out. But as soon as I add one, these three are all here. I might have decided that, okay, well, I don't want that. I want the loudness meter to be over here, but I would have really liked the spectrum to be as wide as the history and had these two modules over here or added in the sound field over to the right, which you can't do. So that's a limitation to the layout, which I, as I said, wish they would fix, but it is what it is. So as I said, we can lay out this however you like, and then you can save it as a preset so you can have multiple views of what you want to see when you want to see it. So you can have, as I did, you can have mixing templates, you can have mastering templates, you can do anything you like. Okay, so whatever you want to see, you can hide, remove, and save it in that layout to recall at any stage. So let's go through each one of the items individually, and let's start with the spectrogram. Okay, so I'm just going to show this fully just to show each one of these items individually. So if we play some music with the spectrogram, we are going to get this view here. We have various views here, so we can okay, so you can do that. You can move it around. You can zoom in with, I'm doing this with the mouse scroll wheel. Let me just turn the audio down while I do this. So this is representing our time here and our frequency spectrums. And if we look, let's say a diagonal look here, the higher the peaks are, the more, well, louder it is, or the more space it's taking up here. And so you can see if anything sort of sticks out here. You'll see that section there jumped out a lot there, which is that guitar that just came in. This part here on the end, which is quite high, is going to be, it's quite low, so it's going to be like the kick and a bit of the bass. And then you've got your very top end here, which is quite sort of low. That's going to be your cymbals or anything like that. And if you were to look closely, you could probably almost pick out where a snare hit is or something like that. It's basically one of these lines. I think every time that line appears there is going to be one. I don't personally find a spectrogram really useful for me unless there's something really obvious. But even then, I prefer to look at it in a spectrum analyzer than a spectrogram. To me, look, I'm sure somebody out there has a great use for it and they really do use it and they find it something useful for something they specifically do. For me, I find it visually appealing, and if I'm doing a video that I think needs to stand out a little bit, I will use this to make my screen look good, but I don't actually use it for much else. We have some settings. So each of these modules is going to have various settings. We can change the perspective, so we can actually go to a 2D view if we wish. And now if you've used anything like RX or anything like that where you do some audio editing, we now have a 2D view. Now, this to me could be quite useful. I find this more useful than I would the 3D view, because I could see if there was any major hum issues or where noises are or anything like that. But again, it would be just for detection. If I actually want to go and correct it, I'm going to then go into something like iZotope RX to go and repair it. We can change the look, so we can make it colorful. We can change some other values here, some zoom, some height, some lengths, scrolls, various settings there to make it look the way you want it to look. And I didn't click OK. So if I go OK, get rid of that. You can see now we've got some multicolor. That's probably a little bit more useful because you can see the color is indicating the loudness and the impact of it and things like that. You know, and again, it looks pretty. Similar to the tonal balance plugin, we can also select various other points in our mix. So we could actually monitor a spectrogram in a different place in our mix. So if we had an instance of neutron or mix tap or ozone on a different track, we could actually just view that one track there. Now, I don't have anything loaded there, but that is something that can be done. Okay, so I have loaded a copy of Neutron 2 Mix Tap onto the shaker track because I want to just pick something really different. So if we look at our spectrogram now, it's got full, it's got all of this stuff in here. We're monitoring basically where Insight is, which is the mix bus. Now I could come across here and I could go, I want to view that and only the shaker. So you'll see now, obviously, the focus is the louder is all at the top end here because if I put it in listen mode, you can hear that the shaker is a very high-pitched instrument. There's no low end. You can see it there. It's died off on the low, very high on the top. Now, you can see there's multiple colors here. And we can actually adjust what color each one is because you might want to look at various parts. So you might say, I want to look at this dynamic EQ. And we've got that colored orange, so you can see how it's laid out. That's a lot of low end, which has now disappeared. So let's start that audio again. So there's a lot of low end in that dynamic EQ there. And the shaker is filling the top end. So you can sort of see how the waveforms look and how it all plays out and balances together. Again, it's not really something I use, but that's how you'd use it. And you can adjust these colors so that you get the right colors that you get displayed on here, so you can compare the differences between them. All right, so if we go across to the spectrum, similar sort of thing, but this is basically what you would expect from a frequency spectrum graph analyzer, whatever you want to call this sort of view. And turn that listen off. So we're getting our frequency waveform here, so we can be looking for problems. We can see how it's balanced. We're getting a value as I'm moving it across, so you can see where things are and how they look. And there's not much actually else to do on this thing other than we can change some settings. We can go to 1/3 octave, criticals, full octaves. Linear is what I would normally leave it to. Real time, if you want to see an average, we can slow it down. So instead of seeing it fluctuating so much, we'll start to see a 5-second average of the audio there. So that can be good to try and get a better understanding of your balance. You can see your low end's quite loud. Top end here drops off as you normally would expect it to drop off a bit. And you can change some window settings in that, but generally I just leave things as normal. You might want to show peaks. So you're going to get a nice line here that shows you your peaks. And that's pretty much it with the spectrum analyzer there. There's not much else to that. So we're going to leave intelligibility for a moment. I'm going to come back to that. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to go to a history. So this is obviously a key component when we're talking about mastering here. We're talking about loudness and where this is going to sit in our loudness realm. So again, this is just a graph. There's not much else to it. And you can see as I play it, it starts to draw this graph. And the graph just continues on and goes and goes and goes. So really the only things we can change here is the settings, and you will see there's 3 values here. So this is going to come in play with our loudness module as well. We are showing integrated loudness, short-term loudness, and momentary loudness. So they're all on by default, and each one of them is a different colored line. So you've got a white line, you've got a gray line, and a red line. Now, if we take one off, you'll see there that the red line disappeared, which is our integrated loudness. If we untick the short-term loudness, that is our white value. And our momentary loudness, which is the most erratic one because that is very quick, is our light gray there. And you can see as I hover over each part here, it's giving us some values as well. So you can see in this part here, if you can read the writing, it's saying at 18 seconds, the momentary M equals minus 19.8, S, which is the short term, is minus 20.5, and the I, which is the integrated, is minus 22.5. And these are going to match up with our loudness meter here, but this is giving it to us in a history. So we could play the entire song, and this graph will continue on and get wider and wider, or narrow. It basically fills out and will start to scale down. And we could obviously widen out if we want to expand our view of that, if we wanted to there, to get a whole big picture of it. So we can let that play for the entire song so that we can then have a look at our final graph here and get a gauge of what it is doing. Now the red line here is actually our target loudness, and that's probably, I'm going to say, defined in the loudness module itself. And we'll prove that when we actually go to the loudness module. So you're looking for your red line here to be as close to this red dotted line as possible, and nothing that's really over the top. And that's going to give us a good idea of how our song is going in realms to the loudness meter. So sound field, you've probably seen this before. It's a lot to do with our stereo placement here. And we have a few different views. So we've got our normal sort of stereo view here, which has got our left here and our right. We have a little green dot here. And this is sort of indicating where our song is sitting in the realms of left and right at the time. Is it balanced? Is it sitting in the center? Obviously, it's going to move backwards and forwards a bit, as we will see. So we're going to see it fluctuate, but we're going to see it mainly hovering around the center. It's going to indicate if there's any balance issues with your mix. If it's really leaning to the left, then you've got a balance problem with your stereo placement and you need to make some adjustments. Or if it's to the right. And this lovely speckled thing here is giving you that same idea. So it's trying to give an indication of the frequencies and where they're sort of splattering out into the stereo field. This is all in the center here, so it's nice to see things around here with a bit of movement out. The further you start to get out, the further you start to get to potential phase issues. On the side here we have our correlation meter, and again this is very standard with pretty much any one of these sort of sound field monitoring tools. You've got 0, -1, +1. You generally want to see this green dot hovering between 0 and +1 most of the time. That means that your audio is in phase. If it starts to hover down to the -1 for too long, that means you've probably got some phasing issues and things are out of phase and need to be looked at, because you could have some issues with your audio, especially if you go into mono compatibility spaces. You can change your view here to, we've got polar sample is default. We can go polar level, which goes away from the dots and starts to give you more of an actual shape to it, I guess. And you've got this one here, which I never really understand this one, but similar sort of approach. I generally just leave it on this one, but it's supposed to give you an idea of how your audio is sitting in the stereo field. You know, it's quite narrow, this mix. A few things jump out, but most of it's pretty much around the center wides with a bit of left and right movement there. And it's a sound field. All right, so levels. Okay, levels is basically a standard sort of meter here. We've got a peak and we've got RMS, we've got left and right. We've got some settings here where we can adjust peak holds and various other things. We can add some color if we want green, red, or grayscale. We can set our maximum peak, we can show a peak hold and things like that. So again, nothing really special about this. It's more, if you don't have any sort of meters, these tools are really great that you can have them all in one plugin and see what you need to see. So we've got these lovely little bars here that are showing us our levels, and they will line up with our peak value here and our RMS. So our peak is going to be this dark green color that's jumping up, and obviously there's a peak hold there that stays up for a little bit. Our lighter green here is pretty much our average, our RMS. That's showing how loud our song is here. So obviously I'm doing this on a mix, so it's quite low. Generally, if you're doing it mastering, you're going to be up here somewhere. So pretty short sort of description on this. Now we've got our loudness meters. So we've got short term, we've got integrated, and we've got momentary. Most of the time when I am looking for loudness, I am looking at integrated, okay? But I'll give you a description of each one. So the short term graph here is giving us a measurement of the loudness over 3 seconds. So it's sort of taking an average for every 3-second period as it goes along. So that's why it's called short term, okay? It's not an average of the entire song or what it's played as it's gone along. It's just doing 3-second increments of average. So it's giving you a good idea of the loudness, but it's taking into account peaks and troughs through the song as it's going. Now, our integrated loudness is taken over, as they say, an indefinite period of time. So it is constantly averaging this over the time that you are playing. So if you play this for the entire song, this value here is going to give you the loudness of the entire song. Now, our momentary measurement here is actually doing a loudness calculation over 400 milliseconds. So it is pretty instant, okay? It is practically showing us the peak measurement to a point, okay? So this one here is going to be jumping up and down erratically a lot of the time. So it's giving you very quick snapshots of what the audio is doing right in that 400 milliseconds. It's going to be constantly changing. So you will see if there's any issues that jump out of massive peaks or bursts or anything like that. But it's not something you're going to determine the loudness of your song over. So at the bottom here, each one of these has a value. So this one here displays a maximum momentary value of LUFS. So LUFS stands for loudness unit full scale. So the LRA stands for loudness range. So this is an interesting one where they're giving you an LU, which is a loudness unit. Okay, it's not full scale, it's just a loudness unit. And it's taking it over the course of the entire calculation. So, and it's also indicated on this graph here, supposedly, if I read the manual right, by this white line. So it's giving us this loudness range. And what I'm imagining is that this range here is sort of the average of where our song is sitting is sitting in this little ballpark here in this range. And it's almost like a dynamic range, I guess. It's how much fluctuation you've got from your lows to your peaks, how crushed your song is. In this case here, we're going 3.4 LU. And then we have a true peak measurement here. And the true peak measurement is it's supposed to indicate where digital to analog gets converted. What is the actual true peak value? Because it can actually, like if you were to push your audio up to 0, this true peak value in theory could actually go above 0, and that's where you'll start to get distortion. Now in here we have lots of different standards, which to be honest, I don't actually understand. Okay, so if you know what standard you need to comply to, then you can pick them from here. But if you actually pick them, they will set different values for each of the different colors, etc. And they've even added a Netflix loudness in here. So when we change our values here, we can click on this and you can see what it's actually doing. So it's not adjusting anything in your audio. It's not doing anything to your mix at all. So when we open this up, what it allows us to do is it allows us to set the desired peak value, what we want to try and not go above. So obviously peak would be 0. If we do not want to take any chance of distorting or clipping, then we would set that lower than 0. We can set our loudness level. So this is going to be where we want to hit our loudness on our integrated for the entire song. And then we can even set the loudness range. So if I was to flick between various settings here, we go to Netflix, we go to a -2 peak, loudness at -27, and we've got a small range of loudness range, but we've got a gate set to dialogue. Let's talk about gating in a minute, but let's just flick through a few of these. So we've got various different settings in each one of these presets. And you can adjust these to your own liking, which is going to kind of come up as custom as well. So if you find the one that you like or the one that you need to conform to, then that is what you will use for your loudness meters here. So you've got lots of various options there. Now, in regards to the gate, what the gate is doing is it's determining, and it's not a gate that's going to affect your audio. Again, it's a gate that determines and affects the metering of the loudness meters only. And what it's basically doing is it's telling the meters to ignore certain things and not attribute them to the loudness. so that it doesn't affect your loudness when certain things go below a threshold, and that suddenly reduces your loudness. So if you have something that fluctuates between signals that are very loud and very soft, those soft parts are going to impact on the loud parts over your song or whatever it is you are, program or TV show, whatever it is you are actually using this monitoring on. And that is going to affect the loudness output at the end. So the gate is supposed to prevent that. So if you have it set to off, that means that any audio that is played through this meter is going to contribute to the loudness results. So if you do have very loud parts and then very soft parts, they are going to eventually average out to somewhere in the middle, depending on which one is there more than the other. So if you have a lot of lows, it's going to come out as very quiet, or it's going to present as very quiet, which may encourage you to boost the volume. But then the parts that are really loud could be extremely loud, so they may be inaccurate. Now, you would have seen here when we went to Netflix, they switched it on to dialogue mode. And what that's supposed to do is it's supposed to enable a loudness gating method, detects if dialogue is present in the source material. So only segments of the program where dialogue is detected will contribute to the loudness meter. So the way I read that is if there's music, it's not going to count it. It's only going to count it if there is dialogue. So for some reason, Netflix want to monitor their loudness profiles based on the dialogue only and exclude audio. So you have the potential to be doing a TV show that has extremely loud music that doesn't get counted toward loudness, only the dialogue does. I'm not sure if that's the best approach or not. I'm not an expert in TV shows and things like ads and stuff like that, but that's where I think the discrepancy usually comes in between these big peaks in shows and these quiet dialogues. You know, if you get a show where they have that sort of very soft whispering acting voice, and then suddenly some music comes in, bang, that would be the reason, because they're not monitoring that in the loudness tools. They're going by the dialogue alone. And that's where you get that difference between the two. So I'm not sure what the best approach is there. As I said, I'm not a video TV show expert, so I can't really give you what is the best approach for loudness in that regards, but that's what it would do. So the program option is applying a minus 10 LU gating threshold when calculating the loudness. So it basically excludes any audio that is in low level. So that will disqualify anything that's noise, or if you have any, again, probably more prevalent to TV shows where there's going to be quiet parts where maybe there's not much going on, or somebody's just walking, or there's just a bit of background noise. That stuff there is not going to impact the loudness. So the loudness is going to be determined on anything that is above that minus 10 LU, and only count that towards your loudness measurement. Now, for me, if you're doing music, most of the time, it's going to be set to off. Dialogue and program is really going to come into play more into movies, TV shows, videos, that sort of stuff. There could be some certain music options that might require to do program. If you have some very arty style music that does have a lot of sound effects and things like that, and you need to get a better reflection of the loudness because you have very quiet parts or very little noises and things like that going on. But most of the time, I would say you'd have it off. And just to backtrack on something else, so let's find I just want to try a couple of settings here. So previously I mentioned about the lines in the history. And if we just to bring this up here, you'll see here this red line now is sitting here just below minus 15, which is this value here, minus 16. So if I move that value, that's where that red line comes in. So when we set our loudness to minus 16, we are going to want to see this line sitting around here. If it's not, that means our song is too quiet. And we can see it is. But again, this is a mix, not a master. So if I was mastering this, I would be pushing the volume up to get it up to sit on average on this red line. So that's where that setting comes in. So these two obviously play in together with each other. And again, we can display all sorts of stuff here. And you'll see here, even on the levels, we have a red dotted line on here as well, which is going to come from this peak value. So if I drop the peak down, we get a dotted red line on the levels here. So we can even look at our peak and see how we are hitting with that there as well. So let's have a look at this intelligibility option here. Okay, so the point of the intelligibility here is that what it's going to do is it's going to receive some data from another plugin, and this instance here, what we've got is I've loaded the iZotope relay plugin that comes with it that is handy to place somewhere. And it's useful for monitoring tracks that don't have any other iZotope plugins on or don't support it. So I have placed this relay on the Vox 1 track, as you'll see there. And what we're checking for is that we are seeing how our vocal is, how intelligibility, how much we can hear it compared to the rest of the audio. So again, we have Insight 2 on the main mix bus. I've now put relay on to the vocal track. Now, this could also come into play with video and TV shows. You could put this on your dialogue track, and this will be on your main output. So it's going to compare the two for if you've got music and background effects and all that sort of stuff. But if we concentrate on music, we're checking how intelligible our vocal is compared to the rest of our song, all of the music, everything else. So if I tick on the vocal Vox here and we play some audio, we've got some music now. So you'll see a dot here and you'll see a couple of graphs. Okay, so these two graphs here are giving us they call it perceived loudness, okay? And they have this, I don't know what this is, to be honest, but it's a value called FONS. But it's a perceived loudness, so it's trying to give you an indication of how loud it thinks we would actually hear this audio. And that's our vocal, and that is the rest of the song without the vocal. Now, this range here is where it is stating that you should have your vocal sitting for it to be clear and intelligible to hear over the rest of the song. So if we play the song, we see our dot, and you can see that we are sitting in this range here. So in theory, by this, it's good. All right, it's starting to get up, but it doesn't go too loud. Now, if it was up here, that means your vocal is too loud. And you should bring it down because it's just way too loud for the music. If it was down here, it means that you're probably not going to hear it very well. It's going to be sunken into the music, a bit too low, not going to be clear. You may not hear all the words, and it's just not great. Now, that can be multiple things in that you need to get your initial volume correct so that you're sitting around this ballpark. But also, if you don't have your compression right or your automation of your vocals and they fluctuate quite a lot, you could have a dot that's moving up and down between the low to the high, which is going to make it very hard to hear all the words, or sometimes it's going to be too loud. So it's going to also show you how dynamic your vocals are and whether you need to do any compression to get it to sit better. Now, you don't want it sitting still. Okay, that is just going to represent audio vocals with no dynamics whatsoever, and it's going to be a flat line, not good. You want some movement, but you want to try and keep the movement so that it's sitting in this realms. Now, this range here is determined by this factor, which is the listener environment. So it's making some assumptions on where you're sitting based on your selection here. So in this case here, we've got low noise. So theory is we're sitting in a quiet room. There's no background noise, very low noise. We can hear the music and the vocals really clearly. So we have a big range here because we can hear vocals that can go down this low and they can go up this high. If we go to medium, our range shrinks a little bit and you'll see that it goes a bit higher. So now what we're saying is that if we're in an environment where it's got a medium level of noise, so it's not quiet, it's not really noisy, it's just got a medium level, for us to hear the vocals clearly, we should have them sitting in this range. So let's see how we go with that. So in this case here, I'm just in there, but I'm borderline. I'm dropping out every now and then. So if this was a big concern to me, then I probably should be pushing those vocals a bit higher. Now, here's where I'm going to assume I'm going to have a problem now, because if I go to the next setting, which is high noise, you can see the range is even smaller. So, and it's even higher. So that means for us to hear the vocals in a very high noise environment. Now, I don't know the actual definitions of what they determine to be high noise, but I would assume this is extreme. You know, maybe you're in a car with the windows open or a convertible, very windy, very noisy roads. Going to be very hard to hear the audio clearly. If you want to be able to pick out all the words from a song and hear the vocals very clearly, then you need to have them very compressed because they need to not fluctuate very much at all, and they need to be quite high in the mix. Now, the downside to that is if you mix to this realm and then somebody listens to this song in a low noise, so let's say our dot's here, if we imagine it's here in line with this spectrogram button here, we got a low noise. We're now having our vocals sitting pretty high, so it's going to be too loud for low noise. So it's more of a case of determining what is the most practical to you and where you're targeting most of your stuff to. Now, I would probably think low noise, check it in here, maybe bordering on the higher end of that. But, you know, I mean, you can see if I go high noise, my vocals don't even get close to that. And if I put the vocals up into that spot, I just don't think I'm going to like the mix. I think it's going to be way too loud. But this might be something that's very appropriate for you for a video or something like that, where you're assuming somebody is always going to listen to this video in high noise. I'm just not sure exactly what the definition of these noises are and why you would target them there, but they are there. So, you know, you might want to go medium if you just want to cover your bases for, you know, if you assume a car is medium noise, maybe you want to target somewhere in here. And if you target it in the low end of the medium noise, it would fall into the higher end of the low noise. So if you're in that realm there, I think you've got two possibilities. If you're on high noise, you're going to struggle to hear those vocals, but we can't cater for every environment. So that's how the intelligibility works. And, you know, it doesn't have to be vocals. Obviously, vocals is the key thing there, but you could even put this on a guitar solo if you want to get your guitar solo in a nice, clear spot. You want to see where it's sitting in the mix because you don't trust your ears and the level, then you could just pull this up and pocket it in there. So there you go. There is Insight 2 by iZotope. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Do you have this plugin? Do you use it? Demo it if you don't, and let me know what you think. I think it's a very powerful monitoring tool, and it's a great addition to your mastering sessions, primarily, and it can be handy in mixing as well, but I would lean more towards mastering. But obviously there's some features there that really do work for mixing as well. And I think it's a really great plugin. If they just added a few extra features and allowed you to adjust the layout a little bit more, it would be almost perfect. Without those things, it is a great plugin. It's very useful, which it's just not perfect. But you know what? Not many plugins are perfect. But let me know what you think. Do you think my opinion is correct? Did I miss something? Is there something you use it for or do that I didn't think about that you can tell me in the comments? I am more than happy to hear your feedback and definitely welcome it. If you liked the video, then click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my new videos as they come out. Hopefully this video has been helpful. I thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.